Welcome to Toffee TV. Today we are going to have a chat about this man, James Rodriguez, who has been fantastic since coming in from Real Madrid. Obviously a lot of chat about whether or not he will be able to cut it in the Premier League. There was obviously some worries over injuries and everything else, but it's fair to say he's been rather good this season.
Technically one of the best footballers I think I've ever watched in a blue shirt, if not the best. Technically.
Yeah. I mean, people try to kick him and say things like, they kick him on the pitch, but try to kick him off it by saying, oh, you know, he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. But with players of his quality, don't you just have to accept that? That's just part of who they are, because it's all the good stuff that they do outweighs the other stuff. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think you've got to appreciate the moments he is in his career, where he is and why we got him, and what he has to offer us, and take the positives and put them next to the negatives. And I'm sure that's what we're going to look at now, and understand that the positives massively outweigh the negatives. And when you've got a manager that loves a player, that understands his role in the team, and that moment, and I think as well in the dressing room, and I think this is really important, I think in the dressing room, you have to have a set of players that also appreciate a player and also know that they might have to just do that little tiny bit extra because of what he doesn't do, maybe defensively. Maybe after 7-8 games, you know, the deficiencies of him being in the team and other teams working it out started to creep in, but then we had to go away and maybe look at the situation, and obviously we did, and he didn't play in a lot of games over December, and we saw. So it's been a learning curve for a lot of people, but I think when you've got a player like him, he's your talisman.
Yeah.
And you've got to cherish that, I think, as a football club.
Yeah, 100%. He's been fantastic. I mean, let's just get on to his actual overall stats for the season. So he's been involved in 21 games. He started 19 of them. He's scored 5 goals and has got 8 assists. His passing accuracy is 87% and his average minutes per game is 78 minutes. I mean, when you've got 5 goals and 8 assists from midfield, I mean, last year we bemoaned that, didn't we? The other thing as well, which I think's really interesting, is look at this. This is his heat map, which for the season so far, which basically... He's
on fire.
He's literally on fire.
He's literally on fire.
He's all over the pitch, isn't he? Absolutely.
Yeah, he's literally on fire. That's incredible.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I see him like that, like I said, the 5 goals and 8 assists. I mean, we sat here in the summer and went through Everton's midfield last season. You know, Bernard, I think, was the top goal scorer of midfield with 3 goals, and he had 2 assists. Yeah. Nobody else. Gylfi got a penalty late on in the season and took his tally for up to 3, I think, for the season as well. After that, you know, 1 and none for the rest of our midfield. Andre Gomez with no goals and stuff like that. So to bring someone in who's that creative, that was including the wide players as well, not including the Charlison because he was up top at that time, but including people like Theo Walcott, Alex Iwobi himself, Anthony Gordon, who played a few. To bring someone in who's already had that kind of impact with those goals from midfield. And a couple of key goals. I mean, goal at Old Trafford, you know, was which brought it back to 2-2, was an important goal. And then,
well, all his goals have meant something, haven't they? They've all won us points.
Yeah.
You know, all his goals have won us points. You know, a couple against Brighton and goal against West Brom and goal at Old Trafford and goal against Leicester. They've all meant something. They've all won us points. So they've all been hugely important. He scored at the right times, and there's been moments where maybe he could have scored more, or keepers made a good save or whatever. But I think having that ability to have a midfielder who does actually start, is creating something, who can change a game, that's the most important thing. It's a player who can change the game. We've seen that from day one at Spurs. A player who suddenly changed the way we played. And it hasn't always flowed like that this season. And the manager's now starting to pick moments when to play and when not to play, and when it's more valuable than others. And again, I think that keeps moving on as like a lane. I think the team's starting to change as well. How, you know, we've seen that heat map then, and how, you know, it starts on the right and then starts slowly drifting over. He's at number 10 that just happens to start on the right for us. Now that might start to change as we start going, maybe as other players, the defence starts settling down. We had a three strong midfielders when Alan comes back, and maybe he can sit in front of them. Maybe the full-backs can do the wide work. And then that might allow for 2 up front, and suddenly he's got 2 options. So it's a very flexible, I think he creates a very flexible situation around him. And it's just about getting the most out of him, it really is.
Definitely. You're talking about his position there. So this is the games so far, 21 games. He's played 13 of those at right forward, off the right-hand side. He's played 4 in that number 10 position. He's played 2 just a bit further back as one of the 3 midfield players. And he's had 2 substitute appearances. And from that, this is his assists. So from right forward, 6 assists have come from that role. The number 10, which was an assist, which was at Anfield at the weekend. But he's been involved, that stat at the bottom, he's been involved in 17 goals so far this season that Everton have scored, which is incredible. Really, he's joint top of the pre-assist list, which is obviously the pass before the assist. So, I mean, you're talking there about obviously him drifting inside. We'll have a little look at that in a minute, which he does well. But there's also been a little drop off from him because he's had injuries. You know, he was injured by Van Dijk in the derby, and that took him. He was out for a few weeks with that, and he seemed to take a bit of time to get over that. And then he came back in, and then he's had another couple of things, and he was out for missed a lot of games over Christmas. Came back on New Year's Day, and he's had obviously the calf injury of late. Do you think he gets enough protection from referees? Because we've seen notably, like Fulham at home and Newcastle at home, they quite clearly targeted kicking him. I mean, Newcastle took it in turns to put him on his backside in that game and really try to ruffle his feathers. Do you think he gets enough protection, or do you think that's just something that's highlighted of late?
No, he doesn't get enough protection, and this is what makes you laugh. You know, you watch other teams and their players and their platoon style of letting the referee know what's just occurred. He gets kicked all over the place. And he gets you might get the odd foul, or the referee, might see it. But saying against Newcastle, the referee never sort of understood what was going on, and how they were taking turns to break it up and stop our best attacker or playmaker, whichever way you look at it. No, and he doesn't get that at all. And I think the problem is I think the opposition will probably feel... We've seen it, Liverpool one's the real key one, and it makes me laugh, and it still makes me laugh how certain people thought it was hilarious. We've seen it in this Mayside derby, we've seen Robertson straight away go in, and there is no protection, and it's laughed off as well by the media, and it's laughed off by commentators letting them know he's in the game. You can't do that anymore. It's not the 80s, it's not the 90s. You can't let people know you're in the game. You can't go over off the ball and elbow somebody. And yet, people keep on doing it to him. And I think it's that idea of, if we get under his skin early, he will not want to be part of this game. He's not one of those players where it's like, get into him, he'll go around and do something stupid. He's not that kind of player. No. I think the idea is, start kicking him, and he might not have a sulk. I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. I think he's the kind of player that if someone keeps kicking him, he's probably just going to go, well, what am I going to do? Or because of his injury record, it's like, well, I can see what's going to happen. These are going to kick me until I get an injury. And we've seen that for Colombia, haven't we? When teams who were playing Colombia, when he's played. Well, when we signed him, and obviously he had a few Colombia games early on, and we were all watching, weren't we? Nervously, and you could, he does get kicked all over the place, but he never. I don't think it's a case of he goes down to it like that, but he does. He is a player who picks up injuries. You've got to be very careful with him, and I think that's that thing of. I think who did he go off against? He went off against Fulham, I think, and people criticise. 2 of them had just done him. And actually, I don't even think he wanted to come off. No. I think the manager just took him off. Yeah. But I think it's that thing of, if we kick him long enough, they'll have to make a decision, because they don't want him to be out of games, because he is susceptible to injuries. Yeah. If you he's such a good player. And he's such a good player that if we can get him taken out the game, by the manager, then we've done what we've done. And that's where he doesn't get the protection. That's where, as I said, that little shit house the other day, for them, I don't know, that's what he is. We all know who he is.
Yeah.
He done that straight away, isn't to say, and Van Dijk done it.
Yeah.
So clearly they'd been targeted in both games, home and away. And the one at Goodison, it did have an effect on him.
Yeah.
You know, and
it's a terrible challenge.
Yeah, it was, and yet it was.
He was done twice.
It was
in the
never.
first couple of minutes.
Yeah, he should. Van Dijk could have easily been sent off.
And if
it'd gone on, if Van Dijk, you know, it gone on during the game, it would have been interesting to see. But obviously, we know what the narrative of that, and it happened against Liverpool at Anfield. He tried to do him straight away, as in to say, "I'll show you."
Yeah.
And luckily enough, it didn't really have an effect on him,
But it did for weeks after, didn't it? Because obviously
in the home game,
we know he was injured, doesn't he? You just touched on something there about the way he plays, so just wanted to just have a little look at this. And this obviously Everton, you know, a flat line up there, and that's the idea, isn't it, for James to drift into that central area there to try and get Luca Dean coming on that side, and then hopefully Richarlison joins him with thing. And this is something that we've seen him doing regularly. He likes to find that pocket of space there, so he moves into that area. And I think I think it's great, because I think it becomes really difficult to pick him up and to mark him when he drops into that pocket of space. The only thing we found that this season is obviously Seamus Coleman hasn't always been available, who's more attacking. Mason Holgate doesn't really overlap. So I think that's maybe an area that Everton needs to look at, and obviously linked with Max Aaron.
That's why, I mean, I've consistently said I think we need a right back to come in who can get up and down, because look at the minute he goes in there, look at all that space that's going to create on that right-hand side.
Well, I'll just take it on just to the next one, and you can talk, because this is where the highlight.
Well, look at that, straight away you can see that. Look at the way Dean, and I think we've seen against Fulham how well it worked when we had a Iwobi playing sort of as a wing back. And Iwobi took that space in really well. And Iwobi can do that. I think Iwobi can do that, but could Iwobi be converted to a right back? Because I think that could be an ideal position for him. But it shows there, Dean, we've seen against Fulham. Iwobi would start on the outside, on the right, come in the inside, so you give it to James Rodriguez, and then Luca Dean was bombing wide. Then you had Richarlison getting in the box. You had the Corey bombing into the box as well, and suddenly you've got an overload. You've got an overload on both sides, and I think this is where we're missing out on the right back at the moment, because Seamus Coleman in the early games, you could see that's what the plan was, and it was brilliant. But the problem was Seamus Coleman's body caught up with him, and he can't. So he clearly can't continue doing that. Mason Holgate is a defender, a proper defender. He'll sometimes hit that space, but he doesn't know what to do with the space.
No,
and so, if you've got someone going forward, and then someone like Tom Davies can drop in at right back, then suddenly we're overloading on both sides. And because he's so talented as a footballer, essentially, then he's got options right and left, and the opposition wouldn't know what to do with him. He's got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he's got Richarlison ahead of him. Suddenly, that's the ideal scenario. The opposition wouldn't know what to do with that scenario, and that's what we've got to start creating. But that will only happen with better players, I think. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we saw that earlier in the season, West Bromwich Albion at home, when he drifted into that and played that rainbow pass to Richarlison, and he knocked it across, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin scores. But he does cause the opposition a problem when he's on the right, because he does drift into that area. And it is a case of, do I go with him as the left back, or do we pass him onto the midfield? And I think if Everton did have that three in midfield, and the Corey could go and join that space as well, it really would clog up where they wanted who they're supposed to mark, because the Corey could act as a distraction. But he's in that area, in that pocket of space. He's a handful, isn't he? Because his ability to pass the ball.
Well, you've got it. The way you got to look at it is, I think, is when we play with, if you're playing with three up front, and it is a proper three, and you've got a proper midfield, you shouldn't be asking any of those front three to come back.
Yeah.
They're attack. You should have enough in midfield and enough defensively to cope.
Because they should occupy four players, really.
So really, they should be dragging people back. Thing is, he goes wandering, and that's fine, because when he goes wandering, he's taking people with him. But you've got to have somebody who goes past them. And early on, it worked perfectly. Opposition team didn't know what to do. But then when we played Liverpool, you could see it straight away. good players. They just started overloading. Seamus Coleman, knowing he wouldn't come back. And I think the problem has been is the rest of our midfield has been, when it's not made up of energetic players or players who didn't know their roles properly, it was getting on top of them. So when we had Alan, Decore and say Gomez, Gomez he lumbers, really, doesn't he? He lumbers around the team. He doesn't, around the field, he doesn't really sprint anywhere.
No.
When Tom Davies is sitting in front of the back four and you've got Decore and you've got two people who know their jobs, now if you get Alan in there as well, suddenly you've got two players who are pressing, someone who's sitting, and it makes it hard. And we've seen how well actually Tom can sit in front of the back four and take the ball off the opposition and get us going by a simple pass. And we've got to get it, and this is why I think a right back's so important. We've got to get it so that we're the ones with the advantage, not the disadvantage. Yeah. And there has been times where playing James Rodriguez looks like a disadvantage, but it's not. It's just that the makeup of the rest of the team, we saw this against Fulham, it's so slow that the players can't get back, and that's where we need energetic players.
Definitely. I mean, you just touched on it there, you know, the game at Goodison, Liverpool, the target at that. Well, Saturday saw it totally different. It was brilliant from Ancelotti. We've seen Jamie Carragher's broke it down and Seamus Coleman's position. And they put James as the split striker, basically. And obviously, looked at that pocket of space which we had before. And there you've got it. I mean, look how many, he's already attracted 3 of their midfield players to the ball. And then he's got that ability. Richarlison knows he's got the ability to feed it in. We know what happens. He slides that ball between Kabak and Henderson. Richarlison goes round the back and we're winning 1.
But it's the ability of the pass used in tandem with Richarlison's pace and movement that gets us the goal. When you've got, and look at him, there's only one person in front of him.
Yeah.
You got, you know, the ball is the pace.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying about James Rodriguez. The ball is the pace there. So it's not about him. People go, oh, he's a slow player, he slows things down, or blah, 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 he doesn't get back. They're the situations you want to create. Yeah. You want to create those situations. You want to create it so actually, you know, you look at James Rodriguez, Decore, and Seamus Coleman here. If you take, say, I don't know, say you take Seamus Coleman out the equation there, and it's actually Dominic Calvert-Lewin on this side here, then suddenly he's got 2 players to it. And you're opening teams up. And that actually, if you had Dom in the picture there, and you've got the protection of 3 players there, who are midfielders, then that's actually how it's supposed to work. The protection of 3, say he's the right back, Seamus Coleman, so he should be actually up here. But I know this was early on in the game, and this was after the game of head tennis.
It was.
But it's the speed of this. Ability will always beat pace. It doesn't, you know, I know people love to, we need a team full of pace, but ability, one pass can take out an entire back 4. It does there. Yeah. That's an entire back 4. Look how narrow it is. 4, There's 7 players in that picture, and then the goalie.
And we get the chance.
And there's 2, so there's 8 players essentially in the space, and we score. Yeah. And that's because that pass is so good.
One thing I will say, if we get him into those spaces, Richarlison's run is brilliant. Is this something Dominic Calvert-Lewin's got to do more of? Because what I mean is Dom showing with his back to goal there? Or is Dom wanting to be on the shoulder? Because we know that Richarlison wants to be on the shoulder.
Yeah, they're different players. That's where they work so brilliantly last year. And I'll tell you one goal that showed that. It was the goal against Crystal Palace to make it 2-1. Yeah. Was when the ball came long, it bounced, line, didn't it? And Dom just got a lovely little knock on it. And he was away because he's forward facing, but that's how a forward partnership's supposed to work. And it'd be interesting to see if we can get that going for the rest of the season or part of the season, where you do have Richarlison running one way, and I tell you another goal, the goal against Spurs that Richarlison scored from the flick of Dom. Dom's facing our goal, Richarlison's facing their goal, and it's worked.
But we saw in that game also the ball by Sigurdsson, which Richarlison again, he's on the shoulder, he's on the top, against he's on the Spurs, corner. Bang,
and I would say that is probably the difference between the two of them. So that, no, it's talking about James Rodriguez, but that's something that maybe the manager, but he'll be influential in that, because he will be sitting in the 10.
So what you're essentially saying is what the picture showed before as a formation. If we've got a back 4 and then we've got a 3, almost 3 flat midfielders, but that consists of maybe Tom Davies, Alan and Decore. then you've got Hammers. So the diamond, really. It enables us to play in a diamond.
I mean, I prefer it more of a flat 3, because I don't think a diamond...
4-3-1-2 you're looking at, aren't you?
Yeah, what you're actually looking at is, what you want is, you actually want 2, 3, 2, 1, 2. You want your 2 centre-backs with Tom Davies, because I know, not really hard to talk about him, but Roberto Martinez had this boxed off, in a way. You had 2 centre-backs with Gareth Barry sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
That was a triangle, essentially. You had 2 full-backs. You had...
Well, it's almost like it becomes a 3-4-1-2, doesn't it?
Then you'd have the midfield of McCarthy as well, and then those full-backs were always going forward, and McCarthy would come back and Gareth... But Gareth Barry would take the ball off the back 4, and that's what Tom Davies is starting to take the ball off the back 4. So... you're already asking your fullbacks to get higher because he's taking the ball off them. He's sucking them in, and then he's looking for those options. Now, if you've got Allen and Decore with that kind of industrial Tom sitting behind them, there should be no need for him to come back.
No.
Those fullbacks, this is where, and again, I'll stress it, this is where the right back, and Max Aarons has been talked about a lot. Someone like Max Aarons, whether it would be Max Aarons, would change the way we play, because he'd always be going that way and would never out. Look, we've sat down before and we were watching the highlights of Bayern Munich playing the Champions League, and we were looking, and out, you're Coleman on one side, I think, for the 4th goal, and it was Alphonso Davies was ready to tap it in. Back, and you got pace, and at no point are Lazio going to go, we can hit these, because that Davies is always, no, if you've got a right back, and suddenly if you've got a man if you've got a man in the middle of the park who can orchestrate it all, who's got the intelligence to orchestrate how all this works, it should work. That
was what I was driving at with Hammers, just to finish off, is that he has got that natural, unbelievable ability, so he doesn't need to be running here, there and everywhere all over the pitch, because if you can get him on the ball in the picture like we've just shown against Liverpool, and you've got people making runs for him, and in the graphic we put up before where he's got 2 full-backs, he could destroy a lot of teams. And if people do have to go and sit people on him, then there's other people free, and that's, I think, where you need the core as well.
What I actually think is interesting is that if Everton played, say, 4-3-1-2, and Everton were defending, you could actually get away with Richarlison being the player who comes back
and drops in,
rather than James Rodriguez dropping in. So when the ball turns, naturally, I think Richarlison would drop. But not instant. I just think he naturally would come back and defend anyway, because he likes to go pick the ball up deep. So it might actually become almost like a Christmas tree of 4-3-2-1 with Richarlison, him occupying not the same space, but because they both they're both split strikers in a way. So rather than being wide in a 3, why couldn't we be narrow? So 2 split strikers and a main striker.
I mean, that's what he did.
That relies on your fullbacks, though.
Yeah, that's what he did at Milan, didn't he? But he had like Kaka and people run Rui Costa and people like that in the same team.
So that probably relies on a right back, and it probably relies on having another centre midfielder who can get round the pitch as well. And that's.
But he does give it. You said before, he gives us that flexibility that we can play him as a wide right forward. I think the only thing what we need to do, if he's continuing to do that and he's coming into them pockets, then I want to see Richarlison getting closer to Dom then, even if we're playing a 4-3-3, and let Luca Dean be the, because we've seen him come in and switch that ball.
Ultimately, you've got to say to the opposition, we're better than you. So we're going to play with fullbacks really high up, and we're going to push you back. And once we get the ball into this lad, then he can do what he wants because he's so good. And let them worry.
Because I want to see him. I do like the idea of the 2 strikers, because I like the idea of it sometimes going longer to Dom, and he's cushioning it down, and he's the one running onto it on the edge of the box. We know we can crack the ball. We know that he can just slide you through and it's a goal.
But it comes down to pace, doesn't it? It comes
and
down
other
to
areas, doesn't it?
Comes down to having players who can, like as I said, the left back situation is pretty much sorted, because Luca Dean's not explosively fast.
No,
but he's very good at getting into. He's intelligent and he's good in getting good areas. But a right back with pace that can get up but also get back, and is always making the opposition think, and always creeping.
Yeah.
So that Richarlison and Dom can be very central. He can be central behind them. And then suddenly you've got your full-backs, mate. And then, I mean, that's literally, that's what Man City did. That's what Liverpool do really well, or have been doing really well. it comes down to having that 3 in midfield who can break the ball up, and then having, you know, him coming in. It's funny because he's dropping off. You know, Liverpool did that with Firmino, didn't he? In a way, he's the one who drops off
into the 8. Yeah,
he drops into that space and allows the other two to come from wide inwards. I know that wouldn't be quite the same as what we're talking about, but it does get done. I mean, Man City do it without a striker in a way, so they have like Gundogan in there and
Sterling,
you know,
coming from
so
there,
I think there's still plenty to get out of him, but he has to have better players around him. When you flood that midfield with Sigurdssons and Gomez's of the world, then suddenly it's slow, and he gets caught up in that, and he doesn't have players running. Can you imagine? Like, he gets a touch and he looks up. It's instinctive to give that ball to Richarlison, but if Richarlison's not making the run, then there's 7 players. That's the other. You take Richarlison out that picture, by the way. He's got 7 players around him, and what's he going to do with it?
And all the Everton players are behind him.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, isn't it?
So that's where we need to start providing him.
Let's be honest, he's an absolute Rolls Royce, isn't he? And if you stuck pace in along, imagine his options. If he had, like, you say, a right-back turn, Bing, Richarlison, Dom, Luca Dean,
Do you know what I like about it, though? If you did create that position for him, Sigurdsson is a good backup.
Well, that was going to finish, because I know we've gone on a bit longer than, but I think it's worth doing, because it's he's fantastic. You're absolutely right there. And Iwobi, if he's in the squad, because you do. I spoke to the Priv actually this morning about this, because I was trying to find out the pre-assist stuff, and it was like, showed him like the formation we had, and he was like, it's great and that could easily work, but what do we do if he isn't available? It's like, you change the whole formation. You can do. We've been very flexible this season, and it's worked brilliant. And maybe that's the way to go, to actually change the formation up time to time. But you're right, Gylfi Sigurdsson can play that role, and I think Iwobi, because Iwobi travels with the ball. You're talking about Richarlison. Richarlison's our best ball carrier. The stats bear that out. Carries the ball furthest up the pitch. But Iwobi does it really well as well. So you're also putting 2 players in there who could also do that. If you didn't want to change it up and say, oh, he's out. Doesn't mean, by the way, we don't go and buy a winger as well in the summer, because you want to have that flexibility to be able to go, actually, we're going to play 4-4-1-1, and the winger's going to, we're having 2 midfielders today. He's playing as a split striker, and you're the pace, you know what I mean? So you never want to go, Everton can only play this way. I think that's, to be honest, I think that's probably the reason why Everton won the derby at the weekend, because it was something totally different. Flexibility won it. So he's been absolutely phenomenal this season, and a joy to watch. The only gutting thing is we haven't been able to get in and watch him. Hopefully that's gonna, we're gonna see a lot more. But what a fantastic signing he's been for nothing. Unbelievable, and long may it continue. He's on 5 goals, 8 assists already, and the season still got 14 league games left and a cup game. So, if he could get another 2 or 3 goals and another couple of assists, he will have had a phenomenal season for Everton Football Club. So, there you go. Let us know what you think in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching James Rodriguez this season, where do you think his best position is? And can Everton use him differently and maybe get those 2 strikers up front? If you like James Rodriguez, give this video a like. That's it. It's very simple. Por favor. Yeah, there you go. We'll see you later then. Yeah. Take it easy. Adios.